December 18th, 8 o'clock. Snow pelting the windows of the Stockman's Club like thrown gravel. Inside the private dining room, the stone fireplace crackled. Crystal chandelier threw golden light across mahogany panels. Ice clinked in bourbon glasses. Cigar smoke curled toward the ceiling. 12 guests around the table, leather booths creaking as they shifted to watch my wife stand. Diane raised her champagne flute. Her voice carried clear and bright. "Frank's just a simple farmer, bless his heart." She smiled at the table. "Curtis understands what ambition looks like." Curtis Brennan, real estate developer, 58, hand resting near Diane's waist, smirked into his glass. The table laughed. Someone said, "To vision." I set my napkin down, stood, took my coat from the rack, the cold leather stiff in my hands. "Oh, Frank, don't be dramatic." The door closed on her laughter. Outside, my truck wouldn't start. Dead battery. Through the window, I watched Curtis refill Diane's glass, watched him lean in close. That's when I knew she'd been planning this long before tonight. I walked to the barn, found the tractor, jumped the truck battery in the parking lot while wind cut through my denim coat. 40 minutes to get home on Route 89. Black ice under fresh powder. The radio played Silent Night between weather warnings. The ranch house was dark when I pulled in. Diane's car still gone. I sat in the cold cab for a minute, engine ticking as it cooled, and looked at the place I'd built over 30 years. Stone chimney my father laid in 1952. Barn where I kept the cattle records. North fence line visible in the distance, white under snow. Everything looked the same as it had this morning, but something had shifted. Like a fence post rotting from the inside. Still standing, but one good wind away from collapse. I went to the barn office instead of the house, turned on the propane heater. The blue flame hissed to life. I made coffee on the hot plate, the percolator burbling in the silence. Pulled out the filing cabinet, started going through bank statements, found it on the kitchen table an hour later when I finally went inside for warmer coffee. December statement, left open, almost like she'd wanted me to see it. Transfer to Brennan Development LLC. October 20th, $47,000. I stood there with my cold coffee reading the line over and over. The furnace kicked on. Somewhere in the house, a pipe creaked. Outside, wind rattled the eaves. Brennan, Curtis Brennan, $47,000. I was still standing there when headlights swept across the kitchen window. 2 in the morning. Her Mercedes, then a second set of lights behind her, Curtis's black truck. It idled in the driveway while she got out. He waited until she reached the porch, then drove away. The front door opened. Heels clicked across the hardwood. She stopped when she saw me at the table. Still in her party dress. Perfume too floral. Artificial, like something trying too hard to cover rot. "You're up," she said. I slid the bank statement across the table. She glanced at it, didn't pick it up. "It's an investment opportunity?" $47,000. "You approved it." Her voice had that edge it got when she was cornered, high and tight. "We discussed this." "When?" "October." She opened the refrigerator, pulled out a bottle of water she didn't drink. "The grazing permit renewal? You signed everything." I remembered signing the grazing permit. Federal paperwork, happens every fall. Stack of forms at the kitchen table. Diane hovering. "Just sign here, Frank, and here. It's routine." But I didn't remember discussing $47,000. "What exactly did I approve?" I asked. She twisted the water bottle cap, plastic cracking in the quiet. "Curtis has a development project. It's a good investment. You said we should diversify." I'd never said that. Never even thought it. "What paperwork did I sign in October?" She set the bottle down, didn't open it. "The grazing permit renewal, like I said, some partnership documents, standard stuff." "Partnership with Curtis." "It's business, Frank." She moved toward the hallway. "I'm tired. We can discuss this tomorrow." "What kind of partnership?" She stopped, her back to me, shoulders tight under the thin dress fabric. "Limited liability, for the development project." "On our ranch?" "Near it." She turned. Her face was hard in the dim kitchen light. Old, suddenly. Not the beauty queen I'd married 8 years ago, just a 62-year-old woman wearing too much makeup and too little truth. "Curtis knows what he's doing. You're good at ranching, Frank, but you don't understand modern business." She walked to the guest room. The lock clicked. I sat at the kitchen table until dawn. The bank statement in front of me. The house silent except for the furnace and the wind. Partnership documents. October. $47,000. I'd signed something more than a grazing permit renewal. Outside, the sun came up over the east pasture, pink light on white snow. Another day starting like all the others, except nothing was the same anymore. The dinner had started 3 hours before I found the bank statement. I'd arrived at 7, private dining room at the Stockman's Club. Diane had arranged everything, said it was a Christmas gathering, said Curtis was just a friend from the country club, said his development company did good work, we should get to know him. I'd believed her then. The room smelled of wood smoke and expensive bourbon, trophy elk mounted on the walls, crystal glasses catching firelight, Curtis at the head of the table like he owned it. Pastor Dale and his wife, 3 couples from the club, people I barely knew, people who smiled at me like I was simple. Diane had seated me at the far end, away from Curtis, away from the conversation. They'd talked about developments, about vision, about men who build versus men who maintain. Curtis had a way of talking that made everything sound important, made ranching sound small. Frank built a fine operation, Curtis had said, raising his glass toward me. Takes discipline to run cattle, but some men build, others maintain, both valuable, different skill sets. The table had nodded, agreed, like I wasn't sitting right there. Then Diane stood, the champagne toast. Frank's just a simple farmer, bless his heart. Curtis understands what ambition looks like. The words had hung in the air, sharp as barbed wire. She'd said more, something about perspective, about needing something Frank couldn't provide. The table had gotten quiet then, uncomfortable. Even Curtis had looked surprised, but not sorry. I'd stood, taken my coat, left them there in the golden light, and in the parking lot, while my dead battery mocked me, I'd heard it through the cracked window. Curtis's voice carrying in the cold air. March 15th is the deadline. We need to accelerate. 4 days passed. I checked fence lines, fed cattle, avoided Diane. She stayed in the guest room. We moved through the house like strangers. December 22nd. I came in from morning chores to find the landline blinking. One message, Martha Klein's voice, shaky, old. She'd worked at the county courthouse for 40 years, knew my father when he'd filed the original ranch deed in 1954. Mr. Holloway, this is Martha at the county clerk's office. There's something you need to know. A quitclaim deed was filed October 15th, transfers 400 acres from Frank Holloway to Diane Holloway, individually, the north parcel. I looked at the signature and, Frank, it doesn't look right. Too shaky, wrong pressure. The statute to contest is 90 days from filing. That's January 13th. You need to call me. The message ended. The machine beeped. I played it again. October 15th. Before the dinner, before the humiliation, before I knew about Curtis. 400 acres. The north parcel, the best grazing land. The section that bordered National Forest, transferred to Diane. My signature. Except it wasn't. I grabbed my coat, drove to the north fence line, snow crunching under my boots, cold metal biting through my work gloves, found them 50 yards in, orange plastic stakes, surveyor's marks, 20 feet onto my land, spaced every 100 yards along the entire boundary, fresh, recent, the snow around them trampled. I pulled one up, property line marker, Curtis's company logo stamped on the side. He'd already been here, measuring, planning, acting like the deed was final, like the land was his. I stood there in the December wind, north pasture stretching white and empty. My father had cleared this section by hand, broke his back pulling stumps, built fence posts that lasted 40 years, and Diane had signed it away, forged my name, given it to her lover. The wind howled across the open field. My breath came out in clouds. Somewhere distant, a cow bayed. I drove back to the house, called Martha's office, got her machine, left a message, tried again, an hour later, same thing, third time, a recording, county offices. Due to hazardous road conditions, Route 89 will be closed for winter maintenance beginning December 26th. The county courthouse will operate with limited staff until spring thaw, expected reopening March 1st. I stood in my barn office, the propane heater ticking, old coffee burned on the hot plate, the phone receiver cold against my ear. The deed was filed October 15th. 90 days to contest meant January 13th. The courthouse closed December 26th. Wouldn't reopen until March. I couldn't reach the courthouse. Couldn't file a contest. Couldn't stop the transfer. The deadline would pass while I was snowed in, while the roads were closed, while the law moved forward without me. Curtis knew, had to know. That's what he'd meant in the parking lot. March 15th, not January 13th. He'd gotten the deadline wrong, or I'd heard him wrong, or he knew something I didn't. Outside, the wind picked up, the first real storm of winter coming in from the north. The weather radio crackled warnings about whiteout conditions. I had 3 weeks to reach a courthouse 200 miles away on roads that wouldn't open for 3 months. December 27th. Morning. Verge Patterson's truck came up the drive at 6. Old Ford, primer gray, exhaust white in the cold air. I was in the barn office when I heard it. Engine rattle, door slam, boots on frozen ground. Verg knocked once and came in, 72 years old, lean as fence wire, Korean War vet, closest thing I had to a brother. He'd drawn a high lottery number in '68. So had I. We'd bonded over not going to Vietnam, while our friends did. He set 2 coffees on my desk, gas station cups, steam rising, then pulled a cedar birdhouse from his coat pocket. Fresh carved, shavings still caught in the joints. He had a whittling habit, kept his hands busy, kept his mind working. Saw Diane's car at Curtis's condo, he said. No preamble. 3 nights running. I took the coffee. Burnt taste. Too much sugar. Perfect. When? Last week. Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. Verge sat in the folding chair across from me. Thought you should know? The propane heater ticked. Outside, a cow load. Somewhere in the rafters, a barn cat moved. I need to see it, I said. Verge reached into his other pocket, pulled out a Nikon camera, old model, military grade, telephoto lens. Still got my recon training, he said. Never thought I'd use it on a friend's wife. But here we are. I held the camera, heavy, cold metal warming in my hands, smelled like old leather and machine oil. I can't ask you to. You're not asking. Verge sipped his coffee. I'm offering. May would have wanted me to. She always said Diana was trouble. Wish I'd listened harder. May had died 5 years ago. Cancer. Verge had been alone since then, same as I'd been alone after Sarah. Same loneliness that had made me think marrying Diane was smart. What's your endgame here, Frank? Verge asked. I didn't know. Couldn't reach the courthouse. Couldn't stop the deed transfer. Couldn't even prove what I suspected. But I could see it, whatever Diane and Curtis were doing. I could document it, gather evidence, build a case for when the roads opened. If that was too late, well, at least I'd know the truth. I don't know yet, I said, but I need to see it first. Verge nodded, stood. I'll start tonight. December 30th. I was at the cattle auction in Great Falls. 90 miles south. Annual sale. Selling off the yearlings before winter feed got expensive. My phone rang halfway through the bidding. County office. I stepped outside into the sale barn corridor. Smell of manure and diesel. Concrete floor slick with mud. Mr. Holloway? Young voice. Clerk, I didn't know. I'm calling about a permit transfer request. Grazing permit for the North Forest boundary. Your wife filed to transfer it to her name, but federal regulations require in-person signature verification. Can you come in today? I looked at my watch. 2 o'clock. County office closed at 5. I was 90 miles away. I'll be there in 2 hours. I left the auction. Drove Route 89 with the speedometer pushing 80. Made it to the courthouse at 4:30. Signed a form stating I did not authorize the transfer. Filed it. Walked out at 4:50. Diane was in the parking lot when I got to my truck. Her Mercedes idling. She rolled down the window. You're sabotaging my future, she said. Cold, flat, no pretense anymore. Your future? Curtis and I are building something. You're just an obstacle. She drove away, left me standing in the courthouse parking lot, exhaust fumes hanging in the cold air. I got in my truck, sat there, hands on the wheel, opened the glove box for my registration, found something else underneath, papers, folded. Blueprint tube label, Brennan Development, LLC. I unfolded them on the steering wheel. Resort development plans, luxury spa cabins, conference center, restaurant, phase 1 boundary highlighted in yellow, 400 acres, my north parcel, the land Diane had already transferred. January 10th, morning, temperature 12 below. I was at the north fence line checking for brakes when Curtis's truck came across the pasture. Black Silverado, new, chrome gleaming even in the flat winter light. He parked 20 yards away, got out, wearing a Carhartt coat that still had the tags on it. City man playing rancher. I kept working, wire cutters in my hand, frozen fence wire biting through my gloves. Frank? Curtis walked over, boots crunching on crusted snow. We need to talk. I didn't look up, clipped a broken wire, started threading new line. Diane and I are building something real, he said. Something that matters. You're making this harder than it needs to be. My land, I said. My fence. Not according to the county records. Curtis moved closer. I could smell his cologne. Too strong, trying to cover something. The deed transferred in October. This is Diane's property now. Mine, once we finalize things. I straightened, looked at him. He was taller than me, younger, but soft. Gym muscles. Nothing earned through work. Forged signature doesn't make it legal, I said. His jaw tightened. You signed it. I watched you. No, you watched Diane practice my signature until she got it close enough. And the wind picked up, blowing snow across the pasture. In the distance, cattle moved against the white. Dark shapes on white canvas. Curtis stepped closer, voice dropping. Accidents happen on ranches in winter, storms, equipment failures, men your age, 67, right? They slip, fall. Nobody finds them until spring thaw. I held the wire cutters, felt their weight, their purpose. Curtis saw me looking, smiled. I'm just saying, this doesn't have to be a fight. Take the settlement Diane's offering. Move somewhere warm. Let people who understand vision do what needs doing. I didn't move. Didn't speak. Curtis waited, then nodded, like I'd agreed to something. Turned and walked back to his truck, drove away across the frozen pasture. I went back to the fence, threaded new wire, twisted it tight. From the barn loft, 200 yards away, a reflection caught the light. Glass, lens, Verge. That afternoon, Verge came by the barn office. Set his camera on the desk, Nikon with the long lens. He smelled like cold air and wood smoke. Got it all, he said. The threat, the posture, everything. He's scared, I said. Verge nodded. Desperate men do stupid things. That's what my CO used to say in Korea. Watch the desperate ones, they're unpredictable. He pulled out the photos he'd taken over the past 2 weeks. Diane's car at Curtis's condo. Different nights, different angles, her leaving at dawn. Curtis on the balcony in a bathrobe. Evidence, clear, undeniable. But evidence of what? Adultery wasn't illegal, and I still couldn't reach the courthouse to file the deed contest. Verge pointed to one photo. Curtis's truck. License plate visible. County courthouse parking permit on the bumper. He's been there recently, Verge said. Question is, doing what? January 15th, 5 days to deadline. I drove to the courthouse. Route 89 south, frost on the windshield, heater barely working. Morning light gray and flat, made it 40 miles, just past the turnoff to Choteau. Highway patrol had the road blocked, orange cones, flashing lights. 2 cruisers angled across both lanes. The trooper walked over when I stopped. Young, maybe 30, face red with cold. Road's closed, sir. Avalanche danger. Won't reopen until March 1st at the earliest. I need to get to the county courthouse, I said. Not today, you don't. He glanced at my ranch plates. You got somewhere to turn around? Storm's coming in. You don't want to be out here. I sat there, engine idling, the trooper waiting, March 1st. The courthouse wouldn't be accessible until March. The deadline was January 13th, 2 days ago. I'd already missed it. The trooper knocked on my window. Sir, you need to turn around now. I turned around, drove home. The gray sky pressing down, wind starting to howl. The barn office was cold when I got back. Propane heater out of fuel. I sat at the metal desk in my coat, breath fogging the air, found an envelope under the door. No stamp. Hand-delivered. Inside a note. Martha's handwriting, shaky cursive, smelled like cigarette smoke. Frank, the quitclaim signature is forged, I'm certain, shaky hand, wrong pressure, but the statute to contest expired January 13th. You needed to file by then. I'm sorry, I tried to reach you. The roads... There's nothing more I can do. The deed stands unless you filed already. Did you file? Martha. I sat there holding the note. The barn silent except for wind through the eaves, cattle moving outside, the distant sound of ice cracking in the water trough. I hadn't filed, couldn't reach the courthouse, couldn't stop the transfer. 400 acres, gone. My father's land, 40 years of work, gone because I couldn't drive through an avalanche zone, because winter didn't care about legal deadlines, because the law and the weather didn't align. I put my head in my hands, the cold metal desk under my elbows, the propane heater dead and useless. The phone rang. I almost didn't answer. Martha's voice, urgent, shaking. Frank, listen, I made a mistake. The statute isn't 90 calendar days, it's 90 business days. Courts are closed, weekends and holidays. That pushes it to March 15th. You still have time. If the road's open. If you can get here. I sat up. March 15th? Yes, I'm sorry. I panicked. Miscounted. You have until March 15th to file the contest. I looked at the calendar on the wall. January 15th today. March 15th was exactly 2 months away. The highway patrol said roads wouldn't open until March 1st, at the earliest. That left 2 weeks. Maybe. If the thaw came early, if the avalanche danger passed, If the weather cooperated. If. Frank? Martha's voice thin over the line. Are you there? I'm here. March 15th, 5 o'clock. That's the deadline. Absolute final. I'll be there, I said, but I didn't know if I would, didn't know if I could. The weather radio on the shelf crackled to life. Automated voice, monotone. Extended road closure on Route 89 now through March 10th due to persistent ice dam formation. Emergency vehicles only. Violators will be prosecuted. March 10th, 5 days before the deadline. If they opened on time, if nothing delayed it. If I could reach the courthouse in 5 days, file the paperwork, stop the transfer, too many ifs. I sat in the cold barn office until dark, the propane heater still empty, the wind howling outside, the deadline hanging over me like a frozen blade. 2 months of winter left, and everything riding on a thaw I couldn't control. February 8th, Thursday afternoon, thaw starting. Icicles dripping from the barn eaves, the sound constant, drip, drip, drip. 3 cars came up the drive at 2, church ladies, Pastor Dale's wife in front, 2 others I recognized from Sunday services. They parked in a line like a convoy. I was replacing a gate hinge when they got out. Carrying casserole dishes covered in foil, steam rising in the cold air, they picked their way across the mud. Careful, heels sinking. Pastor Dale's wife reached me first. Linda, 60-something, kind face usually, not today. Frank, she held out a glass dish. We brought you some support. Appreciate it, I said, didn't take the dish. But I'm fine. Pastor Dale asked us to check on you. Another woman, name I couldn't remember. We know this is difficult. Divorce is hard on everyone. I hadn't filed for divorce. Diane hadn't either. We were just existing in the same house, like ghosts. We want you to know, Linda continued, that we understand Diane's perspective. She's still young, has needs, sometimes the age gap. I'm good, I said, set down the screwdriver, wiped my hands on my jeans. Thank you for coming, but I don't need casseroles. The third woman stepped forward, older, sharper. Frank, bitterness won't help. The Christian thing is forgiveness. Diane made a mistake, but she's trying to move forward with her life. You should support that. I looked at the 3 of them, standing in my driveway, on my land, holding their dishes of pity. Diane forged my signature on a deed, I said. Quiet, even. Stole 400 acres. That's not a mistake. That's theft. Linda's face went tight. That's between you and her, and the lawyers. We're just here to offer community support. Then support the truth, I said. They left the casseroles on my porch anyway. Drove away in their convoy, muddy tire tracks in the drive. I went back to the gate hinge, let the dishes sit. 20 minutes later, another vehicle. Old Dodge truck, primer spots on the hood. I looked up expecting more church people. Nora Beckett owned the Stockman's Diner in town, 64, gray hair pulled back, honest face. She'd known my father. Used to serve him coffee. Every morning, when he'd drive in for feed supplies, she got out, looked at the casseroles on my porch, shook her head. Vultures, she said, walked over. I watched them leave, figured you might need a real visit. I smiled. First time in weeks. Appreciate it. Frank, I need to tell you something. She pulled a folded napkin from her coat pocket. Diner napkin. Logo faded. I saw Diane at my place. November 8th. Corner booth. She was practicing something. She unfolded the napkin, handed it to me. Signatures. My name. Frank Holloway, written over and over, 20 times at least. Different pressures, different slants, like someone learning to forge. One matched the deed signature exactly. She left it on the table, Nora said. I thought it was odd. Kept it because my daddy always said, when someone practices lying, they're planning something big. I held the napkin, paper soft from age, ink faded but clear. The smell of old coffee and bacon grease. Why didn't you say something? I asked. I didn't know what I was looking at until Martha mentioned the forged deed at the diner last week. Nora's voice went quiet. I'm sorry, Frank. I should have. Your father, Walter, he was good to my family. Gave my brother work when nobody else would. I owe you this much. Evidence. Physical proof. Diane had practiced my signature. Premeditated. Planned. Will you testify? I asked. Already told Martha I would. Nora looked at the casseroles on my porch. Real Christians stand up for what's right, not what's comfortable. She left. I stood in the muddy drive holding a diner napkin worth more than gold. February 20th, the barn office at night, propane heater glowing blue, coffee burnt on the hot plate, smell of old paper and diesel. Verge came in through the side door, stamped snow off his boots. Behind him, Martha Klein. She'd ridden in on Verge's snowmobile. 2 hours from town, her face red with cold, cigarette smoke clinging to her county clerk coat. "This better be worth frostbite," she said, but she smiled. I spread the documents on my desk, the forged deed, bank statements, Verge's surveillance photos, Nora's napkin. Martha pulled reading glasses from her pocket, examined the napkin under my desk lamp, then the deed signature, back and forth. "It's a match," she said. The slant, the pressure on the H in November 8th, 6 weeks before the deed was filed, premeditation. "Will it hold up?" Verge asked. "With my testimony on the signature analysis and Nora's witness statement?" "Yes." Martha lit a cigarette, took a drag. "But you still need to file by March 15th. In person, at my office." I looked at the calendar. February 20th, 3 weeks, roads still closed. March 10th projected opening, 5 days to file. "Jerry Hoskins owes me a favor," Verge said. He pulled out a folded map, spread it over my documents. "Cessna, 6-seater, he can fly us to the county seat, hour flight, skip the roads entirely." "How much?" I asked. Verge grinned. "Maybe your pride. Jerry'll want the story, but he's solid. Flew medevac in the Gulf War. He'll get us there." Martha tapped ash into my coffee can. "If you can file by March 15th, I'll testify the signature's fake. I'll bring every signature sample I have. But Frank, you need to physically get to my office. No exceptions. Federal statute requires in-person filing for property contests." "What about Curtis?" I asked. Martha's face darkened. "He filed Resort LLC paperwork last week. Business license, environmental impact waiver. He's acting like the deed is final, like you won't contest it." "Why?" Verge asked. "Because he's on a timeline," I said. He told Diane at the Christmas party, March 15th. That's not just my deadline. It's his, too. Something happens March 15th that matters to him. Martha nodded slowly. "The investor meeting. I saw the filing. Curtis pitched a resort development to backers, promised secured land by mid-March. If he doesn't deliver, he loses everything," Verge finished. We sat in the barn office, the propane heater ticking, wind rattling the door, the map spread between us showing the flight path that might save everything. If the weather held, if Jerry could fly, if we made the deadline. March 15th, 3 weeks away, the thaw coming, and everything hanging on a plan that depended on trust and luck and one old Cessna. February 28th, Sunday. Pastor Dale staged his intervention after service. I'd gone because I always went. Routine. Habit. 40 years of Sundays in the same pew, Sarah beside me for 30 of them. Then alone. Then Diane for 8, now alone again. The service ended. People filed out. I stood to leave. Pastor Dale blocked the aisle, Linda behind him, 6 other congregation members forming a semicircle, trapping me between the pew and the wall. "Frank," Pastor Dale's voice had that counseling tone, soft, reasonable. "We need to talk about Diane." "Nothing to talk about." "She's unhappy. You must see that." Linda moved closer, perfume heavy, floral, made the air thick. "The age difference. You're 67. She's 62, but she's still vibrant, still has needs. Sometimes love means letting go." I looked at the faces around me. Church people, good people, people I'd known for decades, all looking at me like I was the problem. "Diane forged my signature," I said, kept my voice level. "Stole 400 acres of land my father cleared by hand. That's not a marriage problem. That's a crime." An older woman, Margaret, schoolteacher 70, shook her head. "That's between you and the lawyers, Frank. We're talking about forgiveness. About what's Christian. Forgiveness doesn't mean letting theft stand." "Bitterness will eat you alive," Pastor Dale said. "I've seen it happen. Good men destroyed by their inability to forgive." The church was empty except for us. Cold February light through the stained glass, smell of old hymnals and floor polish. The same building where I'd married Sarah, where we'd buried her 30 years later. "I appreciate your concern," I said, quiet, final. "But I know the difference between forgiveness and enabling." I walked past them, down the aisle, out into the gray morning. That afternoon, I drove to the feed store, needed salt blocks, fence staples, routine supply run. The conversation stopped when I walked in. 4 men at the counter, ranchers, people I'd known my whole life. They looked at me, then away, quick, guilty. I grabbed what I needed, loaded it in my cart. The silence followed me through the aisles, sound of my boots on concrete, the fluorescent lights humming. At the register, Tom Hadley rang me up. 50 years old, ran the store since his father retired, didn't meet my eyes. That'll be $87.40. I paid, cash, waited for my receipt. Behind me, someone whispered, not quiet enough. Heard he's trying to steal her property in the divorce, using some technicality about the signature. Tom handed me the receipt, face red, still wouldn't look at me. I picked up my bags, turned to leave. The store owner was standing by the door, old-timer, 80-something, weathered face, hands twisted with arthritis. He'd known my father back in the 50s, sold him the first load of fence posts for the ranch. He followed me out to my truck, slow steps, careful on the wet pavement, cold rain starting, that February rain that's half ice. Frank, I stopped loading, looked at him. Your daddy was honest as daylight, he said, voice rough, cigarette worn. I know you are too, don't quit. He turned and went back inside, didn't wait for a response. I stood in the parking lot, cold rain on my neck, the feed bags heavy in my hands, and something lighter in my chest. March 5th. Verge came by with news. He'd been in town, drinking coffee at Nora's diner, listening. Curtis is broke, Verge said, set down his coffee. We were in the barn office, cold rain drumming on the tin roof, steady, hypnotic. 3 LLCs in default, 2 developments foreclosed. He's over-leveraged to hell. I looked up from the fence repair schedule I'd been pretending to work on. How broke? Needs your resort to survive. The investors he pitched, they want guaranteed land by March 15th or they pull out. Without them, he's got nothing. Verge pulled out papers, bank filings, public record. He's not some big developer. He's a failing grifter betting everything on stolen land. I read through the documents. Curtis Brennan, 3 failed projects, mounting debt, credit lines maxed, his company hemorrhaging money. The resort development, my 400 acres, was his last chance. And if I contested the deed, if I won, he'd have nothing to sell investors, nothing to save himself. There's more, Verge said, slid another paper across the desk. His ranch, 200 acres south of here, foreclosure auction scheduled April 20th. I looked at the notice. Curtis's property, the land he'd bought 3 years ago with borrowed money, now being sold to pay creditors. Opening bid, $900,000. What if I bought it? I said. Verge smiled slow. Now you're thinking. Nora showed up an hour later, drove through the rain, came into the barn office shaking water off her coat, smelled like diner grease and cigarettes. Curtis came by my place last week, she said, no preamble. Set her purse on my desk. December 1st, before your Christmas dinner, he offered me money. For what? My silence. Wanted me to say I never saw Diane practicing signatures. Said if you asked, I should tell you she never came in November. Nora's face was hard. Offered $500. What did you say? Told him to get out of my diner. She pulled out a small notebook, opened it. I wrote down everything, date, time, what he said, his exact words. Make sure Frank doesn't have any witnesses. That's what he told me. She tore out the page, handed it to me. I already gave a copy to Martha, told her I'll testify. Fraud, conspiracy, whatever you need. Nora's voice went quiet. Your father gave my brother work in '72, cerebral palsy. Nobody else would hire him. Walter paid him fair, treated him with respect. I owe your family. After she left, I sat with Verge, rain on the roof, the evidence spreading across my desk, the forged deed, the signature practice napkin, the surveillance photos, Curtis's foreclosure notice. He's not dangerous because he's powerful, Verge said. He's dangerous because he's desperate. I picked up the foreclosure notice. April 20th, Curtis's ranch, 200 acres. If I contested the deed and won, I'd keep my 400 acres. If I bought Curtis's foreclosed ranch, I'd have 800 total. Double what I started with. Curtis would have nothing, and the developer who'd tried to steal my father's legacy would lose everything to the rancher he'd called simple. The rain drummed on. March 5th, 10 days until the deadline. The road still closed, the Cessna waiting, and a plan forming that felt like justice. March 8th, 3 in the morning. I couldn't sleep. Sat in the barn office with Sarah's letters spread across the desk, found them in December, kept going back to them. Her handwriting, careful cursive, the paper yellowed, 30 years old. She'd written them during her last months, cancer eating her from inside, but her words still strong, still clear. The ranch will outlast us, Frank. Don't die defending dirt. Live for what it represents. I read that line over and over. Propane heater glowing blue in the corner. Coffee burnt to tar on the hot plate. The smell of old paper and diesel and exhaustion. What did it represent? The ranch, the land, 400 acres my father had cleared by hand, stumps pulled with a Model A and chains, fence posts that lasted 40 years, legacy built on sweat and honesty, and I was fighting to keep it. Fighting Diane, fighting Curtis, fighting the weather and the law and time itself. For what? I was 67, tired, alone. The church had turned against me. Half the town thought I was the villain. And even if I won, even if I reached the courthouse, filed the contest, kept the land, what then? I'd still be alone. Still wake up every morning to fence lines and cattle in silence. Still eat dinner at a table built for two. Still sleep in a house that echoed. The forged deed sat in front of me, the signature Diane had practiced, the theft that had started all this. I pulled my lighter from my pocket. Old Zippo. Sarah had given it to me in 1980, brass worn smooth, engraved with my initials, flicked it open, the flame jumped. Orange and blue, the smell of lighter fluid. Held the deed over it, the paper corner an inch from the flame, one twitch and it would catch. Burn. Evidence gone. Contest impossible. I could stop fighting, let Diane have the 400 acres, let Curtis build his resort. Move somewhere warm, like he'd suggested, Arizona maybe, New Mexico, somewhere without winter, without memories, without ghosts. The flame wavered. The paper edge turning brown from the heat. Don't die defending dirt. Live for what it represents. But what if I didn't know what it represented anymore? What if I was just defending it because I didn't know how to do anything else? Headlights swept through the barn office window. I snapped the lighter closed. The flame died. The deed unmarked. A truck engine. Door slam. Boots on frozen ground. Verge came through the side door at 3:15 in the morning, face gray with cold, breath fogging. He looked at me, at the lighter in my hand, at the deed on the desk. You coming or quitting? He said. I set the lighter down. It's 3 in the morning. Road's open tomorrow. Jerry's ready. We fly at dawn. Verge moved to the coffee pot. Poured himself a cup without asking. Drank it black. Burnt. Terrible. So I'm asking, you coming or quitting? I looked at Sarah's letters. At the deed. At Verge, standing in my barn office at 3 in the morning because he'd driven through the dark to stop me from making a mistake. I'm tired, I said. I know. I don't know if this is worth it. Yes, you do. Verge set down his cup. You're just scared it won't be enough, that you'll win and still be alone. That's not the land's fault, Frank. That's life's fault. He pulled out a folded map, spread it on the desk over Sarah's letters. Flight path marked in red. Billings Airport to county seat, 1 hour. We leave at 6, Verge said. Drive 4 hours to Billings, fly 1 hour, file by noon. You'll have 5 hours to spare before the deadline. If the weather holds, it will. If Jerry can fly, he can. If... Frank, Verge's voice cut through. Stop looking for reasons to quit. Sarah didn't write those letters so you could give up. She wrote them so you'd know when to hold on. I looked at him, 72 years old, driving through the night, planning a rescue mission. For me, for land he'd never own, for a fight that wasn't his. Why? I asked. Because you'd do the same. Verge folded the map. Because May would haunt me if I didn't. Because your father gave my family work when we needed it. Pick a reason. They're all true. 6 hours later, morning light, cold and clear, the thaw in full swing, mud season starting. I was packing documents in the barn office when the mail truck came up the drive. Early, 10 o'clock. Usually came afternoon. Driver honked, left the mail in the box, drove away. I walked out. Boots sinking in mud. The air smelled like wet earth and diesel and something green. Spring coming, finally. Bills, advertisements, county notices, and a check. Thin envelope. Return address. Continental Energy Partners. I opened it, standing by the mailbox. Mineral rights royalty. Monthly payment. $8,400. Been getting them since 2021. Natural gas under the back 40. Dad had secured rights in 1965. Thought the land was worthless. Turns out he was wrong. The checks deposited automatically to a separate account, one I'd opened after marrying Diane. Private. Mine. She'd never asked about it, never wondered where the extra money came from. I'd saved every check. 18 months of royalties. Never touched them, didn't need to. The ranch paid its own way. Verge walked over from his truck, saw me holding the check. What's that? I handed it to him. He whistled. How long you been getting these? Since 2021, gas under the back 40. Dad secured rights decades ago. Verge looked at me, then at the check, then back at me. Curtis doesn't know, does he? I shook my head. How much you got saved? I pulled out my checkbook from my coat pocket, flipped to the balance page, showed him $42,000. Verge's face split into a grin. Frank, that's auction money. Curtis's ranch, 200 acres. Foreclosure auction April 20th. Opening bid $900,000. But with my mineral rights income continuing, $8,000 a month, I could qualify for financing. Put down $42,000. Borrow the rest against future royalties. Buy the ranch Curtis was losing. Add it to my 400 acres if I kept them. 800 acres total, double what I'd started with. Built from the wreckage of Curtis's greed. He tried to steal 400, I said. I'll take his 200 instead. Verge slapped me on the shoulder. Now you're thinking like Sarah would have wanted. We stood in the muddy driveway, morning sun warming the air, the check in my hand, the flight path planned, the deadline 7 days away, and for the first time since December, I felt something besides tired. I felt ready. March 14th, 4 in the morning, stars still out, temperature just above freezing, Verge's truck in my driveway, engine running, exhaust white in the headlights. I locked the barn office, grabbed the document case. Everything inside, the forged deed, bank statements showing the $47,000 transfer, Verge's surveillance photos of Diane at Curtis's condo, Nora's napkin with the signature practice, Martha's signature analysis notes, evidence. 18 weeks of gathering, all riding on one flight. Diane's bedroom light was off, she hadn't come out. Hadn't said a word to me in 3 weeks, living like ghosts in the same house. I got in Verge's truck, set the case between us. He handed me coffee. Gas station. Too hot, too sweet, perfect. Jerry's waiting, Verge said. Put the truck in gear. Let's go get your land back. Route 89 south, 4 hours to Billings Airport. The highway had opened 3 days ago, mud season in full swing, brown water in the ditches, snow only in the shadows now, the smell of wet earth through the truck vents. Verge drove steady, 70 miles an hour, his old Ford rattling but reliable, the heater blasting, weather radio crackling between us. Clear skies through noon, the automated voice said. Winds out of the northwest at 10. Good flying weather, if it held. We didn't talk much. Verge whittled while he drove, one hand on the wheel, the other working a piece of cedar, shavings falling onto the bench seat, the smell of wood and coffee and diesel. Dawn came up over the prairie, pink and gold, the land stretching flat and endless, cattle in the distance, fence lines running to the horizon. My father's land somewhere behind us, waiting to see if I could save it. Billings Airport, small, regional. Jerry Hoskins was waiting by his Cessna when we pulled up at 8:10. 60 years old, lean, Gulf War medevac pilot, owed Verge a favor from 20 years back, something about VA benefits and paperwork. Verge never said exactly what. The Cessna was white with blue trim, 6-seater, well-maintained. Jerry did his pre-flight check while we loaded. The smell of aviation fuel, cold metal, morning wind across the tarmac. Weather's good, Jerry said, checking gauges. Hour flight, maybe less with this tailwind. You'll be there by 9:30. I climbed into the back. Verge took the co-pilot seat, the document case on my lap, everything I owned that mattered inside a leather briefcase. Jerry started the engine. The propeller caught, roared to life, the whole plane vibrating, sound filling everything, drowning thought. We taxied, waited for clearance. Then the engine opened up and we were rolling, faster, the runway blurring, then that moment of lightness. Wheels leaving Earth, the ground falling away. I looked out the window, saw Route 89 below, the closed sections, the avalanche zones, the reason I couldn't drive. From up here, it looked easy, just roads and snow. But I knew better, knew what it meant to be trapped by weather and time and distance. The Cessna climbed, leveled off. Jerry set the course. 1 hour to the county seat, 3 hours until the courthouse closed for lunch, 5 hours, 18 minutes until the deadline. We landed at 9:20, small airstrip outside town, taxi waiting like Jerry had arranged. The courthouse was 10 minutes away. Marble steps, columns, built in 1923, the same building where my father had filed the original ranch deed in 1954. Martha was waiting on the steps, 68 years old, county clerk for 40 years, cigarette in her hand, smoke curling in the cold morning air. You made it, she said, relief in her voice. Told you I would. She led us inside. The marble hallway echoed, our boots loud on stone, the smell of old wood and floor polish and paper, government smell, official, permanent. Her office was on the second floor, files stacked everywhere, decades of county records. She cleared her desk with one sweep, papers sliding into a box. Show me what you have. I opened the case, laid it out. Each document, each piece of evidence, the forged deed with Diane's shaky signature, Martha's analysis showing wrong pressure, wrong slant, Nora's napkin from November 8th, the signature practice. 20 attempts, 1, matching the deed exactly, Verge's surveillance photos, Diane's car at Curtis's condo, different nights, different angles, the affair documented, bank statements, the $47,000 transfer to Brennan Development LLC, October 20th, the same month as the deed filing. Martha examined each piece, put on her reading glasses, held pages to the light, compared signatures, made notes. This is solid, she said. Premeditation, fraud, conspiracy. The signature analysis alone would win, but with Nora's witness testimony in the timeline, she looked up. Frank, this is airtight. Will it hold? Yes. She started filling out forms. Property deed contest, fraud allegation, request for temporary injunction pending full hearing. We file this and the transfer freezes immediately. She typed. I signed. Verge witnessed. Martha stamped each page with her official seal. The sound loud in the quiet office. Final, legal, real, 11:42. She handed me the file-stamped copy. You made it, she said. 5 hours, 18 minutes to spare. The injunction was immediate. The deed transfer frozen. Curtis couldn't sell, couldn't develop, couldn't use the land. And the investor meeting he'd scheduled for today, the one that depended on secured property by March 15th, was now worthless. We flew back to Billings, landed at 2. Verge drove me home, the sun warmed through the windshield, spring arriving, finally. My phone rang as we crossed the county line. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me. Frank Holloway, Curtis's voice, tight, angry, barely controlled. You think you've won? Loud, almost shouting. You filed your little contest? So what? Diane and I will appeal. We'll bury you in legal fees. We'll drag this out for years. You'll die before it's settled. I let him talk. Verge glanced over, raised his eyebrows. Curtis kept going. You're a broke rancher playing games you don't understand. You can't afford to fight this. You'll give up. You always do. You're too old, too tired, too... Curtis, I said. Quiet. Calm. I'm 67. I've got time, and I've got something you don't. He paused. What? Money. Silence on the line. Then a laugh. Forced. Brittle. You? You're broke. I've seen your financials. You live off a cattle operation that barely breaks even. Mineral rights, I said. My dad secured them in 1965. Natural gas under the back 40. Been getting royalty checks since 2021. $8,400 a month. The silence stretched. I could hear him breathing, hear the moment he understood. 18 months of royalties, I continued. Never touched them. Saved every check. That's $42,000, Curtis. And it keeps coming. Every month. Like clockwork. You're lying. I'm bidding on your ranch April 20th, the foreclosure auction. I already called the auctioneer, registered as bidder 47. Opening bids $900,000. I'm good for $1.2 million cash. Financing approved this morning against future royalties. Nothing, just breathing. Then a sound. Small, choked. Curtis, I said, you still there? The line went dead. Verge looked at me. What did you say to him? The truth. I put the phone away. That he stole 400 acres of dirt while I had 200 acres sitting on a gold mine. That he targeted the wrong asset. Verge started laughing. Deep belly laugh. The truck swerving slightly. Frank, you magnificent bastard. That evening, my barn office. The file-stamped deed contest on my desk. Proof, official, legal. I called the livestock auction house. Asked for the manager, Jim Peterson. Knew him 30 years. Honest man. Fair man. Jim, Frank Holloway. I want to register for the Brennan Ranch auction. April 20th. Already got you down, Frank. Bidder 47. You serious about this? 1.2 million serious. He whistled. That'll do it. Opening bid's 900. I don't expect much competition. Property's over-leveraged. Curtis bought high. Market's down. You bid $1 million, you'll probably take it. I'm bidding 1.2. I want it clean. No questions. All right then. See you April 20th. Auctions at the Stockman's Club. Basement level. 10 in the morning. The Stockman's Club. Where Diane had humiliated me in December. Where Curtis had sat beside her. Where I'd walked out into the snow. Full circle. I hung up. Sat in the barn office. Propane heater ticking. The deed contest in my hands. The auction registration confirmed. March 14th. 1 month until Curtis lost everything. And I'd take his 200 acres, add them to my 400, build the 800-acre empire my father had dreamed of but never lived to see. Not bad for a simple farmer. April 20th, 10 in the morning, the Stockman's Club basement, same building where Diane had humiliated me 4 months ago, but the auction room was different. Concrete floor, metal folding chairs, cattle pens visible through the back windows, the smell of manure and diesel and money. 30 people in the gallery, ranchers mostly, investors, lawyers, curious locals who'd heard about Curtis's fall. I sat in the back row, clean denim, leather coat, Verge beside me. We didn't talk, just waited. Curtis was at the front, ashen, wearing a Target suit that didn't fit right, too big in the shoulders, too loose at the waist. He'd lost weight. 40 pounds, maybe. Stress eating him from inside. He kept looking back, scanning the crowd, looking for someone. Competition, maybe, or allies. His eyes found mine. Held. Something passed between us. Recognition, understanding, the predator realizing he'd become prey. The auctioneer stepped to the podium. Ray Morrison, 65, been running cattle auctions for 40 years, voice like gravel in a blender. Lot 17, Brennan Ranch, 200 acres. Improvements include main house, barn, equipment shed, well rights. Opening bid $900,000. Do I hear 900? Silence. The room waiting. Curtis raised his hand, shaking. 900, Ray nodded. 900. Do I hear 950? A man in the third row. Someone I didn't know. City clothes. Investor, maybe. 950. 1 million, Curtis said. Louder, desperate. The investor leaned back, shook his head. Out. Ray scanned the room. 1 million. Going once. I raised my paddle. Number 47. 1.2 million. The room went silent. 30 heads turned. Curtis stood, his chair scraping concrete. Where did you... He couldn't finish, just stared. Ray recovered first. Professional. 1.2 million from bidder 47? Do I hear 1.3? Curtis's mouth opened, closed. His lawyer beside him whispered something urgent. Curtis shook his head, kept shaking it, like denial could change reality. Going once, Ray said. Curtis sat down, shoulders slumped. Going twice. The gavel came up, wood polished smooth from decades of use, the instrument of judgment, justice in a working-class venue. Sold to bidder 47, Frank Holloway. The gavel fell, the sound echoed in the concrete room. Final, legal, done. Curtis didn't move, just sat there staring at nothing, his face the color of old newspaper, gray, lifeless. I signed the paperwork, paid the deposit, $42,000, the rest due at closing, 30 days. Curtis stumbled out before I finished, didn't look back, just walked through the basement door, into the parking lot, a man with nothing left. I was loading documents in my truck when the lawyer approached. Young woman, 30 maybe, expensive suit, Diane's attorney from the divorce filings. Mr. Holloway, she held out a card. My client would like to settle, immediately, no trial. What are the terms? She keeps her personal belongings, jewelry, vehicle, no alimony, no claim on the ranch, or any future assets. 5-year non-compete clause. She won't work in real estate or property development within the state. I looked at the card. Diane's surrender, complete, unconditional. She'll sign tonight, the lawyer continued. Papers can be filed tomorrow, divorce final within a week. Why the rush? The lawyer's face was carefully neutral, professional. She's leaving the state. Has a job offer in California. She wants this resolved before she goes. California, far from here, far from Curtis, far from the wreckage she'd created. I'll sign, I said. The lawyer nodded, relief in her eyes, like she'd expected a fight. I'll messenger the papers this afternoon. She walked away, heels clicking on pavement, the sound fading. Verge came over from his truck. What did she want? Diane settling, signing away everything, leaving the state. Verge pulled out his knife, started whittling, cedar shavings falling onto the gravel. Sometimes people just want to run, easier than facing what they did. I looked back at the Stockman's Club. 4 months ago, I'd walked out of that building into snow, humiliated, betrayed, believing my marriage and my land were both dying. Today, I'd walked out owning 800 acres, free of Diane, free of Curtis, the empire rebuilt from the ashes of their greed, not revenge, just consequences, the natural order reasserting itself. April 25th, morning. The divorce papers came back signed. Filed with the county, final, dissolved. 8 years of marriage, ended with a notary stamp and overnight delivery. I was at the north fence line when Verge's truck came up the pasture. He got out with his toolbox, We didn't need to discuss it. Just started working, replacing the old posts, the ones my father had set 40 years ago. Wood rotted at the base, still standing but weak. We pulled them one by one, dug new holes, set fresh cedar posts, pounded them deep, strung new wire. The work was slow, good. The kind that doesn't require thought, just muscle and rhythm and time. The morning was warm, first real warmth of spring, the smell of wet earth and green grass, snow completely gone now. Mud season over, the ground firming up, meadowlarks sang from the fence posts, clear, bright, the sound of spring arriving. Verge worked beside me, didn't talk much, just whistled sometimes, worked his knife when we took breaks. Cedar shavings collecting at his feet. 800 acres, he said finally, hammering a staple. Your dad would be proud. I thought about that. My father, Walter, dead 30 years, never saw the mineral rights pay off, never knew about the gas under the back 40, just secured the rights because he believed in protecting what you had. He taught me something, I said. Don't own land. Steward it. The land outlasts you. Verge nodded, hammered another staple. Diane and Curtis never understood that. They saw dirt, you see legacy. We finished the fence line by noon, straight and true. New posts solid in the ground, wire tight, it would last another 40 years, maybe more. I had one more thing to do. The oak sapling was 3 feet tall. I'd bought it in town, carried it in my truck bed, northern red oak, hardy, long-lived, would take 50 years to reach full size. I'd never see it grown, but someone would. I dug the hole at the edge of the north pasture, where the land opened up, where you could see for miles, the place Sarah had loved best, set the sapling careful, filled the hole, packed the earth firm, poured water from a 5-gallon bucket. Verge stood beside me, quiet, respectful. She'd have liked this ending, he said. I thought about Sarah's letters. Don't die defending dirt. Live for what it represents. I'd almost quit, almost burned the deed that night in March, almost let Diane and Curtis have it all. But I'd held on, not for revenge, not even for justice, for what it represented, legacy, honesty, work that outlasted the people who did it. The oak would grow, slow, patient, long after I was gone, long after Diane and Curtis were forgotten. It would still be here, roots deep in land my father had cleared, branches reaching toward sky neither of us would see. That was enough. Verge and I stood there in the warm spring morning, the fence line stretching behind us, 800 acres visible from this ridge. The empire built not through taking but through holding, through knowing the difference between price and value, between ambition and greed, between loneliness and solitude. I looked at the vista, the land my father had built, the land I'd defended, the land I'd expanded. Diane had wanted ambition, had called me simple, had mocked me for maintaining instead of building. But she'd never understood. Ambition isn't taking, it's holding, it's knowing what matters, it's fighting for legacy even when you're tired, even when you're alone, even when the weather and the law and time itself work against you. The meadowlark sang again, clear, perfect, the sound of spring and survival and second chances. I picked up my tools. Verge picked up his. We had work to do, fence posts to set, cattle to tend, land to steward, the work that outlasts us all. You know, folks ask me if I regret marrying Diane. I don't. She taught me something Sarah couldn't. The difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is needing someone to fill a hole. Solitude is being whole enough not to need filling. After Sarah died, I mistook one for the other. Cost me $47,000 and almost 400 acres. But I got 800 in return. Math works funny that way. Curtis thought ambition meant taking. Diane thought it meant escaping. They were both wrong. My daddy built this ranch with a Model A truck and a handshake for credit. He secured mineral rights to land nobody wanted because he understood something. You don't own land. You steward it. The land outlasts you. Diane wanted a resort where cattle grazed. Curtis wanted profit where my father's sweat soaked the ground. They saw dirt. I saw legacy. That's not ambition. That's just knowing the difference between price and value. It's May now, 3 years since all this happened. The fence line is mended. Cattle are back on the north pasture where they belong. Sarah's memorial oak is 8 feet tall. Won't see shade in my lifetime. But my neighbor's grandson might, kid 7. Comes by sometimes to help with chores. Asks questions about ranching, about my father, about how long it takes an oak to grow. I tell him 50 years, maybe more. He asks if I'll see it full grown. I tell him no. But that's not the point. Verge still comes by Thursdays. We don't talk about Diane or Curtis much. Mostly we fix things, gates, water troughs, the future in small ways. Spring came this year like it always does, not because it forgave winter, just because it was time. If you're going through something like this, betrayal, theft, humiliation. Here's what I learned. Don't fight for revenge. Fight for what you'd protect, even if no one was watching. The rest is just weather. And weather changes. I'm 70 now. The ranch runs itself, mostly. 800 acres of land my father started and I finished. Mineral rights still paying, the oak still growing. Some nights I sit on the porch, listen to the meadowlarks, watch the sunset over pasture that'll be here long after I'm gone. That's the thing about legacy. It's not what you take, it's what you leave standing. Diane never understood that. Curtis either. But the land does. The land always knows.